She said we were drifting, that she needed freedom. Turns out freedom meant cheating while I worked to pay our mortgage. I didn't yell. I watched. I prepared. And then one morning, I ended her fairy tale without ever raising my voice.
My name's Daryl Jensen. I'm 52, live alone, and for the last 28 years, I've worked at a shipping warehouse just outside Akron, Ohio. Nothing fancy, just rows of metal shelving, the hum of forklifts, and pallets stacked taller than a man should ever climb. I clock in at 5:58 a.m. every day. Not because I'm some kind of saint. I just believe if a man says he'll be somewhere, he should show up. I started there when I was 24. Fresh off a bad breakup, no college degree, just grit and a willingness to do what needed doing. Over the years, I watched guys come and go. Some lasted a month, some a few years. Most figured out the job didn't offer much in terms of glamour or praise. But me, I stuck around. There's a certain kind of peace in routine. Keeps the noise away. I never really aimed for much. I didn't need a lot. My house is modest, paid off. I drive a beat-up Ford Ranger that rattles when it idles. My idea of a big weekend was grilling 2 burgers instead of 1. But I did have pride in my work. I trained dozens of new hires, ran the dock better than anyone else, even developed a way to streamline the morning loadouts that cut shift start time by nearly 15 minutes. Never asked for credit. I just did what was needed. So when the floor manager job opened up, the one I'd quietly waited years to see, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was time. But then came Caleb, 28 years old. Smooth-talking, wears cologne to work, and is the kind of guy who calls everybody boss, while never actually doing what the boss asks. He'd been here less than 2 years, and I'd trained him myself. Showed him how to operate the scanner, how to log trailers properly. Even helped him when his kid got sick last winter. I drove him home once when his battery died. He's also my godson, my ex-best friend's kid. The day the announcement was made, I was breaking down a busted pallet of pressure-treated wood. My back was screaming. My knees ached, but I was still faster than half the crew. Then I heard the clapping. I looked up. Caleb was standing next to Jason, our shift supervisor. Jason had a big grin on his face and a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Say hello to your new floor manager, boys." I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I just turned back to the busted pallet and kept working. Later that day, I asked Jason if we could talk. He was the kind of guy who wore reflective sunglasses indoors and used phrases like, moving the needle. Not much substance behind his MBA clipboard. "Look, Daryl," he said, hands steepled like he was about to fire me. "You're one of our most reliable guys. Seriously. But Caleb? He's leadership material. He gets it." "Gets what?" Jason leaned back like he'd been waiting for that question. "He understands where the company's going. The future. Tech metrics. Modern stuff." I just nodded. I wasn't going to beg for what I already earned. I went home that night, sat on my front porch with a cold Miller Lite, and stared at the streetlight across from my driveway. That's when I noticed something strange. My time card didn't match the hours I'd worked. A few days short. Nothing big. Just small chunks missing here and there. Curious, I dug deeper. A week's worth of hours was logged under someone else's name. Then I found Caleb's logs. Perfect. Pristine. Like clockwork. And then Jason's, which were inflated with admin time he never worked. It wasn't just a bad promotion decision. They were stealing time. My time. Others' time. And somewhere up the ladder, somebody was pocketing the difference. Now, I ain't a tech guy. Never claimed to be. But I know paper. I know patterns. And I've got a drawer full of notebooks. Every day I've worked. Every pallet I've loaded. Every hour I've clocked. I never set out to be the guy who takes people down. But I've been quiet for 28 years. And maybe, just maybe, that was my mistake. After that night on the porch, I started paying closer attention. Not just to my hours, to everything. The breaks Caleb took that weren't logged. The shipments that came in light but showed full on the system. The way Jason would disappear for long meetings, only to come back with coffee from a cafe 20 minutes away. And the cherry on top. Caleb's new truck. A brand new, full-size Silverado with custom rims, delivered on a Thursday morning, right into the employee lot. I didn't ask questions. I just wrote things down. See, most guys in my position would have marched into HR or sent some anonymous complaint. But I've been around long enough to know how that goes. HR doesn't protect workers, they protect the company. And Caleb? He wasn't just some random hire. His mom's second cousin was a regional VP. The kind of connection that doesn't show up on org charts but decides who gets promoted and who gets watched. So I didn't go loud. I went quiet. I started hanging back after shifts, rechecking inventory, noted discrepancies, took photos, sent myself emails with timestamp documentation. I got friendly with Debbie in accounts payable. She thought I was sweet, always brought her an extra Danish from the break room. She never noticed how I peeked at the payment reports on her screen. 3 weeks in, I had enough. The scam was bigger than I'd thought. They were over-reporting shipments and clocking hours on ghost workers, names of guys who'd left months ago. Caleb and Jason were siphoning the difference into dummy contractor payments that got rerouted to shell accounts. And you know how I knew? Because one of those payments was in my name. That's when it got personal. They were planning to burn me when it all came down. Make me the fall guy. Caleb even dropped a little comment in the break room one day, laughing with another supervisor. Old dogs don't know they're being put down till the needle hits. I didn't even flinch. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't hit like a slap. It builds like rust. Quiet, steady, irreversible until one day everything that held you up gives out at once. But I wasn't planning on giving out. I was planning on letting the rust spread to the right places. The next step was leverage. So I printed one page from my folder of evidence, just one. A payroll stub showing a contractor bonus linked to a fake name with Jason's initials in the memo line. Then I left it in the glove box of Caleb's new truck during lunch. Unfolded. Deliberate. That night, I watched from across the lot as Caleb unlocked the truck and saw the page. His face dropped. He looked around like he was being watched. He was. I made sure of it. The next morning, Jason called a team huddle. Standard safety talk, nothing unusual. But he kept looking at me like a man trying to figure out whether a wolf's growl means playtime or blood. Then he pulled Caleb aside after the meeting. They argued in the corner near the loading dock. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't need to. Their body language said enough. Finger pointing. Tight jaws. Caleb walked away first. Jason stood alone, looking more rattled than I'd ever seen him. That's when I knew I had them. But I wasn't done. See, it wasn't enough to expose them. Not yet. Because if they fell now, I'd go down with them, collateral damage, guilty by association. And more than that, they'd move on. Rebrand their resumes. Take jobs elsewhere. Start fresh. I didn't want fresh starts for them. I wanted scars. I wanted people to whisper their names with disgust in the hallways. I wanted them to see my face in the rearview mirror every time they tried to outrun what they did. So I waited. And while I waited, I built something. A file. Encrypted. Dated. With transaction logs, internal memos, payroll irregularities, the works. And I didn't send it to the company. I sent it to a journalist. A local business columnist named Amanda Reese. She'd written an expose last year about a furniture plant that skimmed overtime off its temp workers' checks. Brought the company to its knees. I didn't give her everything, just enough to bait the hook. A story about corruption in the logistics sector with names redacted but enough detail to raise eyebrows. She bit. We met at a diner off Route 8. I wore my work jacket. She wore a scarf even though it wasn't cold. You're Daryl. Depends who's asking. She smiled. You've got something, don't you? I slid the flash drive across the table. You write what's true. No embellishment. No spin. Just facts. Always, she said, taking it. But why now? I looked her dead in the eye. Because I built this place. And they're pissing on the foundation. A week passed before Amanda's column went live, and when it hit the local news outlets, I had to fight every instinct not to gloat. The story broke like a bomb in a glass house. At first, no one knew it was Jason or Caleb who were behind the scheme. But I'd made sure the story was layered in a way that hinted at their involvement without explicitly naming them. I knew they'd be sweating, trying to cover their tracks. They'd start making moves to protect themselves. The key was not to act too quickly. But my heart raced the moment I saw the headline, Local Logistics Firm Under Investigation for Fraud, Workers Overpaid, Company Underreported for Years. It was a win in my book. But not the final one. The company scrambled, of course. The CEO issued a statement declaring they were fully cooperating with the authorities.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing experience, but we really need your support, namely a subscription to the channel, which can make it possible to hire a professional voice actor and make the best content for you.
Internal investigations were announced. The board of directors was reviewing the situation. Everyone who had any real stake in the company put on a show of concern, but the truth was written in the columns of that article. It was only a matter of time before the feds got involved. I sat at my desk replaying the whole process in my mind. How everything was set in motion the moment I decided to stop being just another silent victim. A few quiet notes here, a few phone calls there. One picture taken at the right moment. One carefully placed document. One journalist who knew what it was like to chase down the truth. But even as I watched the wheels turn, I knew it wasn't over. Jason had texted me that night. I didn't respond. But I knew exactly what he was doing, trying to figure out what I had on him. Trying to play his next move. When the feds arrived, he would know he was caught, but his panic would make him dangerous. He would try to take me down with him. I couldn't let that happen. The first part of my revenge had been exposing them. The second part was making sure they would never escape the consequences. No amount of scrambling or damage control could stop what was coming. And as they fumbled, I prepared my next step. The next few days were a blur of subtle movements. I wasn't the only one watching the situation unravel. Amanda's column had triggered other reporters who dug even deeper. By the end of the week, there was talk of fraud charges, embezzlement, and even claims of money laundering. It was inevitable Jason and Caleb would be fired. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. The kind of retribution that left scars. The kind that would haunt them long after they were exonerated. I met Amanda again, this time in a small, quiet coffee shop. She was visibly excited, more so than the last time we spoke. "I don't know how you did it, Daryl," she said, lowering her voice. "But everything we dug up? It's huge. The board is freaking out. They've already started pushing the narrative that this was an isolated incident. I don't think they'll be able to spin this one, Amanda," I said, sipping my coffee, not with what I have on them. She leaned in, her eyes scanning the empty room before she spoke again. "I've got another lead. An internal email. It's about Caleb talking about covering up more than just the payroll stuff. Something bigger. Now that got my attention." "What are you talking about?" Amanda slid a manila folder across the table, her fingers tracing the edge like she was handing over a treasure. "This is the real story, Daryl. The kind of thing that goes beyond just your work. I'm talking about corporate corruption on a massive scale. If this gets out, they're finished." I took the folder and felt a rush of adrenaline. It was time to give Caleb and Jason the kind of ending they deserved. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about exposing the rot at the core of their operation. I knew it was coming to a head. The feds were circling. The whispers at work had gotten louder. Jason and Caleb were on borrowed time. I wasn't the type to let things slide. And if anyone had learned anything about me by now, it was that I never stopped until the job was done. It was time to finish it. As I walked out of the coffee shop, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. I had everything I needed, and soon they would understand just how far I was willing to go to make things right. I didn't say much the day after I learned the truth. Didn't yell, didn't rage. I just took a long walk. I passed the bakery she used to beg me to visit on Sundays. Past the movie theater where we saw our first film, a grainy little indie thing that she pretended to love more than I knew she really did. I stopped outside the florist on 5th, where I used to pick up daisies every other Friday like clockwork. None of that meant anything now. But I wasn't spiraling. I was thinking. There's a quiet kind of anger, not the shouting kind, not the fists on tables kind. The kind that simmers just beneath your ribs and shapes into something razor-sharp. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. And I didn't need to ruin her life to do it. I just needed her to see it fall apart one brick at a time. I started with the car. We only had one, technically mine, titled in my name before the marriage. She drove it more since I worked from home most days. But one quiet morning, I called the lender and had it moved out of our joint insurance policy. That triggered an automatic suspension with the DMV. I watched from the front porch as she got pulled over 2 blocks from the house, red and blue flashing behind her. She called me confused. I told her I didn't know what had happened. Maybe she missed a renewal? She just said, "Don't treat me like I'm stupid." I didn't. I treated her like someone who needed to learn the consequences of dishonesty, slow and surgical. Next was the second account. A savings one she didn't know I had. Years ago, I'd started putting away a sliver of my freelance checks into a completely separate institution. Not hiding it, just safeguarding. Quiet security. It had grown into something respectable. And now, with that buffer, I closed out the joint account entirely. She noticed. She always noticed money. Did you touch the joint account? She asked over dinner one night. I set down my fork and shrugged. You said we needed some space. Thought it might help if our finances got a little room to breathe too. That line landed exactly like I hoped it would. A week later, I moved into the guest room. Told her work was intense. Needed focus. She didn't argue. She was slipping. A little guilt, maybe? Or maybe she was just preparing to make her exit feel justified. But I was ahead of her now. I reached out to Mark, a buddy I hadn't spoken to in too long, now working in local real estate. Asked him to evaluate the market value of our house. Just for fun, I said. I knew her friend Allison was in the business too. I wanted that number to circulate. I wanted her to hear that if she walked away from me, she'd be walking away from 6 figures in equity she hadn't earned. She started making small gestures again. Coffee in the morning. Asking about my deadlines. I knew what it meant. It meant she was unsure. That she was reevaluating the balance sheet in her head. And people like her? They always think in terms of cost. That's when I made the move she didn't expect. I invited her to dinner. The night I invited her to dinner, I didn't dress up. No candles, no soft music, no wine on the table. Just her favorite takeout Thai from the place around the corner. The one I used to complain was too expensive. I even threw in the mango sticky rice she liked. Just a little breadcrumb. She looked at the table when she walked in and gave me that confused half-smile like she wasn't sure what angle I was working. Neither was she comfortable enough to ask. This feels nice, she said. Felt like it was time we talked, I said. But we didn't. Not really. We just sat and picked at food. She asked about my clients. I asked if she'd heard back from her mom about that beach trip they were planning. The usual married couple theater, 2 actors with practiced lines. She didn't know I'd already pulled every shared document out of our cloud account. Didn't know I'd printed copies of every suspicious expense from our joint card over the last 3 years. Names I didn't recognize. Hotels I'd never visited. Flights she said were work. Uber rides logged at 2 a.m. from downtown. I hadn't confronted her with them. I wouldn't. That wasn't the point. Let her wonder what I knew. I waited 2 more weeks. Pretended to forget our anniversary. Let her be the one to feel distant for a change. Gave her space to justify her guilt with self-pity. She didn't apologize, but she tried to reattach. Movie night. A casual hand on my shoulder in the kitchen. Those weak attempts people make when they're trying to win back a version of you they never really respected to begin with. But I wasn't interested in repair. I was interested in control. She didn't know I'd listed the house. Quietly. Under a different agent, using a power of attorney I'd set up long ago for emergency relocation work I never ended up doing. The paperwork was still valid. The house was still mine. Bought before we married. Her name never touched the deed. She didn't notice the for sale sign go up because I made sure it didn't, not until the buyer's inspection was already scheduled. I was in the garage the morning she finally snapped. She came out holding the envelope the agent had left on the kitchen counter. You're selling the house? I wiped my hands with a rag and looked at her. Calm. Measured. Yeah, I am. Without telling me? I shrugged. There wasn't much to tell. It's not your name on the papers. Her face changed. Something between anger and panic. That moment where someone realizes the scaffolding they've leaned on is already gone. This is our home. No, I said. This is a house. Our home was the version of us that existed before you decided to build a second life behind my back. She tried to argue, but she knew it was hollow. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just handed her an envelope with the finalized equity breakdown and a check. Generous. More than legally required. But not enough to buy her dignity back. I'm not staying, I said. And neither are you. And then I walked out. I didn't change my number. I didn't block hers. Let the texts come. Let the missed calls stack. Silence, when deliberate, is louder than any response. 3 weeks after I left the house, I closed the sale. A quiet transfer. No announcements, no arguments. I stayed long enough to sign papers and hand over keys to a couple from Idaho who'd fallen in love with the garden I never cared much about. Funny, the things we leave behind mean something to someone else. She'd moved out by then. Her pride wouldn't let her stay in a house where she'd lost control. The new address she gave me for the equity check was her sister's. Or maybe her new man's. I didn't ask. Didn't care. I bought a place upstate. Smaller. 1 floor. No shared closets. No photos on the walls. Just clean lines and quiet mornings. The first night there, I slept on the floor. Mattress hadn't arrived yet. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I slept 8 full hours. I saw her once more. Not by plan. Grocery store in the city. She didn't notice me at first. She was with a friend or maybe a new boyfriend. Laughing too loud. Wearing a shade of lipstick I hadn't seen before. Trying too hard. She saw me near the exit. Stopped walking. Looked like she wanted to say something. Maybe explain. Maybe apologize. I didn't stop. Just gave her a nod like I would to a neighbor I barely knew. That was it. Sometimes people expect revenge to be loud. Explosive. A scene. They imagine shattered windows and screaming matches. But the truth is, real justice, earned justice, is quiet. It's dignity held in place while the world assumes you've been broken. I wasn't. I was cleaner. Firmer. What I took from that woman wasn't just her comfort or control, it was her illusion that she was always one step ahead. That I'd never see it coming. That I'd forgive or beg or fight to keep what she'd already thrown away. No. I let her fall into her own trap. Let her live with the version of me she created in her head, spineless, oblivious, safe. Let her discover, piece by piece, that I'd known. That every moment she faked, I watched. Every lie she told, I noted. That by the time she thought she had it all, I'd already moved past her. The man she betrayed didn't burn down her world. He just stopped building it. And she never saw it coming.
What do you think of the story? Write in the comments.